Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to the YouTube channel grecochess, the channel of the game of chess. And in this video, we're continuing once again. We are doing the puzzle rush of chess.com. What does this mean? Is that chess.com is going to throw to us one puzzle after another, and we're expected to solve it, meaning play correctly all the necessary moves until the end. And every puzzle we get correct, we get one extra point. Uh, and if we get wrong, we are allowed to have at most three puzzles wrong. The moment we have the third puzzle wrong, the game is over. See how many points we can get before we get the three puzzles wrong. My record until now is 50. Let's see if we can break it. Also, while doing the puzzle, time limit, I have it survival, meaning there is no time limit, so I have enough time to discuss with you my thoughts. See if my thoughts are correct, and in the end, when we get the three puzzles wrong, we're going to return to them and see what would have been the correct solution. I'd like to invite you, when the new puzzle arrives, pause your video, see if you can do it by yourselves. Also in the comments, please tell us how have you done in this puzzle rush? What is your record? What is your experience? And from this puzzle rush, you can learn quite a lot of things because quite often puzzle positions may arise in real games. And if we've encountered them in the past, it's so much easier to use them to win a games. The most exciting case I ever had is once when my opponent won my rook. I was careless, I blundered my rook, but the moment I lost my rook and I was so desperate and I knew I was losing the game, I found out that this was a part solution. All I had to do is sacrifice my queen next move, and then the move after that, it was checkmate. And thanks to my skill from the past, my knowledge, instead of losing the game I was a rook down, I was able to win it. And let's start now. Let me share my screen with you. And here we are. See, I'm selecting the survival mode. The alternatives are 3 and 5, but this means that in 3 or 5 minutes, it's over, even if you have all the puzzles correct. And of course, if you have 3 puzzles wrong, you are still over in the 3 and 5. And let me start with the first. And usually the first ones are very easy. It must be 1 or 2 move checkmate. But later on, they become more and more difficult. And let's see how can we do. And by the way, the top score of 59 you see here, I've explained in the past, is once there was an issue with chess.com and it was keeping throwing me the same puzzles again and again. And of course, I got 59, but I don't consider this to be my record. The first one. Let's see what's happening here. This seems to be not so easy for the first one, but it's not so difficult. Rook goes to c1 check, king goes to h2, rook goes to h check, or rook goes to h5, and third move, rook to h5 mate. See if this is going to be the answer. With arrows, I indicate the moves that may be played, but they may or may not be correct. And meaning they are correct as moves, but they may have missed better moves. But let's see what's happening. Yep, yep, and yep. And we got the first puzzle correct, you see here. The second one, this is a one move background checkmate. Let's throw the arrow first. Queen will go to d1. And yep, we got it. The third one, similarly, rook goes to d1, checkmate. The fourth one, here we have to reply to a check. But how do we do it? The queen is checking a king, but if a queen takes the enemy's king, the black queen, then the king supports it, and we win at least the queen, if not the game. Yep. Next one. Here, as I say, checks, captures, and threats. What one should check first, and here I have a wonderful check. The bishop from c4 goes to e6. Ideally, the first checks you see are the ones where you don't lose material. You wouldn't see, for example, the queen going to f7, because there you lose your queen. And this, I think, is mate. Yes. Next one. Here, there is no one move checkmate. I think we don't even start with a check. If rook goes to c2, how can our opponent stop us from rook going to c1? Well, it cannot stop us, but they may move the king to e1 or g1, but still rook going to c1 is a mate. So no matter how they reply, next move rook goes to c1 is mate. Well, not exactly. The rook will go to c1, the knight will fall to d1, but still rook takes knight is mate. Let's see. Yes. Here, queen rook have a battery along the g file. If queen goes to g7, it should be mate. Here, queen goes to f7 check, king must go to h8, then queen goes to f8 check, rook takes, and then our rook takes on f8 mate. Now let's see what's happening here. Here you see the pawn on g5 is wonderful, blocks the king from going to f8, 6 or h6. So if the rook goes to e7, that should be mate. Easy, let's give a look. Yes. Here, it's a queen ending, and when there is a queen ending, one needs to check if queen get off the board, who is winning. Here, if queens get off the board, black is the advantage that the h pawn is more advanced. Then it needs 4 squares to promote, while the f-pawn needs 5 squares. In addition, can the king stop the pawn? It doesn't seem so, it's too far away. But how can we exchange queens? Because if it is on our benefit to exchange queens, our opponent will try their best not to exchange the queens. They will not voluntarily exchange the queens unless they are winning, in this case we don't want. But there is a way we can force exchange, because if queen goes to c6, it's a check. They have to exchange, otherwise they're losing. And then the pawn race is starting. The king is too far away, so they rely on their pawn. And we promote simultaneously. And now what can we do from h1? I'm not even sure what can we do. Is it going to win or not? There's something else. We don't go all the way to the pawn race, because our king is near the enemy's pawn. And when they push their pawn, we push ours. They push theirs, push ours. They push theirs, and now we don't continue the pawn race. We move a king nearby. Because if they move the pawn, we stop it at the last moment, and the king is too far away to take a pawn that's already on a3. Let's see if this is the answer. Because originally, if we just allow the pawn race, we almost tie the score. We uh, promote simultaneously, but here you see that while their king is too far away, our king can stop their pawn. And now, since they didn't even start pushing their pawn, we can push the pawn until the end. Yes, we got it. Let's see what's happening here. Once again, a similar case like a previous puzzle. But queen goes to f2 check, it's only on the other side of the board. King goes to h1, queen to f1, rook takes, and our rook checkmates. See if this is the answer. See, this idea will appear too many times. You sacrifice a queen to checkmate with a king. Here it is a one move checkmate. If queen goes to f2, it is checkmate. You see the queen is blocking the white king from escaping. And we finished the first 12, the first horizontal line. No mistakes until now. Let's see how we'll continue. Here it is a two-move checkmate. Look, white has castle queenside, but they have lost the a pawn. So black can easily invade. Queen, if queen goes to a1, you may think, yes, there's a defense. Knight goes to b1, but if our knight goes to a2, the white king has nowhere to go. And he can thank his queen for blocking the d2 square. Yep. Let's continue now. It's a little bit tricky because queen can go to neither b8, no c8, or d8. But there's something else. Forget about the queen checking. We'll check with the knight. It is on e4 and it's going to go to d6. When knight checks, you cannot interfere. You either take the knight or you move the king. But take the knight, there's no black piece can take the knight. And move where? Go to d8, the queen covers that. So knight goes to d6, mate. Next one. Here the white knight by going to f3 gives the chance to black to win the f2 pawn with the queen and a checkmate. Let's continue. Here what's happening. White is the queen, black is the two rooks. What can the two rooks do? They can go to f2 check and then they can go, if they put the two rooks f1, f2 check, yes, they can sacrifice a rook for the queen. Look how. Rook goes to f1, then the other rook goes to f2, and if, of course, the king is on g3, the rook can go from f1 to g1 and win the queen. If it goes instead on h1, then the rook goes to h1 and goes back and we win with the queen. Let's see if this is the answer. Here, yes, second move. Third move here, and we win the queen for a rook, and with the next rook, we are winning. Let's see what's happening here. This, as I said before, queen checks, captures, threats. And we have a wonderful check. Especially the easy puzzles here, see if it is possible to with one move checkmate, or at least prepare a checkmate for the second. Because if the queen goes from g4 to d4, where can the white king go? The rook on a2 covers all the squares. The queen cannot be captured. Of course, next to the king is protected by the pawn. There is no interference, so this would be checkmate. Great. Let's see here what's happening. It seems that if queen takes a knight, rook takes a bishop. Materially, also as we go on, we need to calculate the material because it seems that white has queen, two rooks, and four light pieces. Black has queen, two rooks, and three light pieces. So if we just win the knight, we are equally material. Yes, we can win the knight. They cannot take the bishop because the queen will win the rook. Anything better? And half part pawns will be one pawn ahead, but do we have anything better than just winning the pawn? Of course, we can take the knight whether with a queen or with a bishop, but is there anything better? And yes, there is. Before the captures, let's look about the checks. Or is it? Let's give a look. If queen goes to h4, it's a check. What can white do? Interfere, nothing can go f2, g3. Take the queen, they cannot. King can only go to f2, still there is a black queen. So this is a one move checkmate. We got it. Here, materially, we are down at least a queen. We have two rooks and three light pieces, and black has queen, two rooks and three white pieces, so we're down a complete queen. So if the rook on h1 takes the queen on h6, we got the queen, but black can take the knight on h7 with their own knight on f6, so we're still down a piece. But what if we first check? We got back one light piece. King has to go somewhere. If they go, for example, to f8, we just got the queen. If they go to h8 or h7, we got the queen. If they go to g7, then we can take the rook with a check. And no matter what the black does, we win the queen. Let's see if this is the answer. Yep. Now we must take the queen since there is no check. Yes, we got an extra piece. Let's see the next one. What will happen if we have two rooks having a battery on the D file? Rook goes here. What can white do? They cannot go to h2 because of a queen. There is no piece to interfere. They can only take a rook with their own rook. But then a rook goes here, check, and it's mate. Uh-uh. White avoided the mate by putting the knight. If we take a knight, we lose a rook, so we're down an exchange. Let's see the material. How is it going? Both sides have, no, we have queen, two rooks, and a piece. Black has queen, one rook, and two pieces. So if we take the rook, we are ahead in material. We got a rook for free. No mate, but at least we won a free rook. Now, we have to be careful because the queen is under attack. The puzzle is not over yet. We think we won the rook, but if we're not careful, we're going to lose a queen. But we are careful. And what we'll do is, we're not going to move a queen. Also, look at that. Black has to be careful, of course, because the white pawn is near promotion. But we'll do something else. We'll take the knight, queen takes, and now we win the bishop. That's not protected by the queen any longer. Now we got it correct. What can we do here? What is happening? White is near promotion. The pawn is two squares away, protected by the two rooks. But the wonderful pawn on d4 is stopping the rooks from controlling d1. If our rook checks from d1, what can black do? They can place the knight on h2. And then, still that's not mate, but if our rook goes to f1, we threaten mate on h1. What can white do? They can check off us here. I think can go, for example, many squares they are free. Can even go to here, f4. Make sure don't move now. I only wanted to make the arrow because if I by mistake I move instead of making the arrow, it will continuous arrow. But let's see. Let's start with check on c1. Yep. And now we said rook goes to f1. King rook checks. Nothing else they can do. If I king goes to f4, I think that's it. But there are other moves. King also go to h6 or who knows what. Rook goes to f1. We should check. Now, where to escape? Be careful. We have to be careful. We cannot, better not go here because they can check with a pawn. And then we lose a wonderful pattern we have. We have to think where to put the king and so on. Instead, what if the king, where else can the king go? If it goes to f6, be careful. Rook can go here and they'll take a rook by Stuart. But if I king goes to h6, what can they do? They can check. To be careful. If they check, no, yes, they can check with either of the rooks and we win the rook. I think that's the best move. Yes. And now what can we do? We have only one. We have two moves. We can either take with the king or with the pawn. No, sorry, we cannot take with the pawn. Because the pawn has to go backwards. We can only take it with the king. We got correct. Let's see the next one. Here we are white. Yes, let's shrink this screen so it's much easier to see who is playing. White to move, yes. And we can win the rook, but then we win the rook when black cannot promote because we have a check. Yes. And now, how can we stop the pawn from promoting? There's only one way, I think. If I rook goes to a5, we got it. What can we do now? Materially, we are way down. We have a queen. Our opponent has queen, two rooks, and two bishops. So either we checkmate, or we have a combination that can win all the rooks and the bishops in one move to the other, which I can't see. Or we must check. But check where? There are two ways to check. Either queen goes to c3, and then what? I don't see then what. Or the queen instead checks from d3. Then the king can only go, because ideally it could go to either f2, f4, but f2 there's a pawn. So it goes to f4, then queen goes here, king goes here. I don't see what, and then what? That is a big, a huge question of the and then what. Anything else? Let's give a look, but I don't see how else can we begin. Can we take the pawn here on e4? King goes to f3. Once again, the f2 position, like king goes to d2. He doesn't allow. Let us queen continue the checks. Clearly, it's queen goes either to e4 and we win the pawn, or to d3. And most likely one is right. No, let's see. If queen goes to d3, as we said, king goes to f4, but queen cannot go to f3. There's no protection. If queen goes to here, yes, here goes to e4, king can only go to g3. g5 is a king on g6, and then queen goes to g4, and we have what's called the mate with epaulets. Epaulets being h2 and f2 that block the king from escaping. Let's see if this is the answer. Second move. And the third move with the epaulets, yes. Here, we could very easily checkmate on h2 with queen and rook as standard pattern, but unfortunately the knight at f3 will stop us, will win a queen. That is why we need to get rid of this knight. How? Check with the knight. Black must take the knight, white must take the knight with the queen, because otherwise queen goes directly to h2 in one spot. But even if the queen takes it, again a queen goes to h2 with a mate. That is why they say if the knight was an f1, then black would have no fun. But the knight is an f3, because if it was an f1 and the rook was here, we could win the exchange perhaps, but there was no mate in the next move. And now, yes, here you see the mate second. We finished the first two horizontal lines, 24 correct and no errors. Let's see how we can continue. The bishop on h3 has a wonderful position, but nobody defends it. It's attacked by the queen. So what can we do? First of all, there is one check with a queen on e1. What can white do? There's only one legal move. King goes to h2. Ready to take a bishop. Now what? If queen goes to f2, clearly they cannot go to h1 because queen to g2 is made. They win it. And here, fortunately, we have a wonderful bishop on d6 that will help the queen go to g3 with a mate. Is this the answer? Let's give a look. Yep. With 25 out of 25, half of our record. Of course, this was the easy 25. Now the difficult 25 will begin. Let's see what can we do, and it's white to play. The black king is not in a nice position. If we had two moves in a row, knight goes to f7 and a rook goes to h8 mate. And now we cannot sacrifice the rook on h8 because then the knight goes to f7, king goes to either g8 or h7, and there is no follow-up. It seems the only promising move is if knight goes to f7 and wait for the next move for rook to go to h8. Clearly the black king has nowhere to go, but can white check us and delay? Can white block the h8 square? The only thing they could do, but only delay for one move, is if rook goes to d8. And yes, it's not immediately, but I think that once we take the, let's see, knight goes f7, rook goes to d8, a rook is going to take on d8 the rook, and then there is no stop. Let's see if this is the answer. Rook, excuse me, said knight goes to f7, move number one. Yes. Rook takes d8, number two. And rook h8, number three. We got it. Let's see here what is happening. In previous puzzles, all three squares in front of the king were blocked and king could not escape. But now the king can go to e2. But can we stop it? What if a bishop goes to d3 check? There is only one legal move for white to block it. Rook goes to e2. But then a queen goes to e1, and that's mate. Let's see if this is the answer. Yep, 26. Let's see what will happen from now on. In fact, 27 now. 26 was before that. Here, the white king is not in a nice position, but it cannot go to any square nearby, but there is no check. Yes, the pawn on d2 is pinned, but so what? If bishop takes it, or if knight takes it, then bishop takes back. But what if a rook takes the bishop on c1? We sacrifice and exchange. There's only one legal move for white. Rook takes here, and then a bishop takes the pawn on d2, it's mate. And some of you may be wondering, how can one see these things so fast? Practice, 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 doing the puzzles, playing the games, losing the games, learning from your losses, not getting discouraged. That's the way to do it. But let's see if I got it right, because I may have it wrong. Yeah, got it right. Now what's happening here is, it looks like back rank. I mean, a rook from b1 is say hello to the king on g1, but there is in the middle this rook at f1. So if white was to play, they would win a rook, and they are ahead in material. Material, by the way, we have an extra exchange, but that is not the crucial factor. And we're going to exchange not because we are ahead, so why not exchange, but for a different reason. Look what. Rook takes, king must take the rook. And then bishop goes here. King has to go all the way back to h1. No, excuse me. The king will have, let's do again. Rook takes, king takes. Bishop goes here, check. And king goes here. And then we have another rook from e8 that will go to e1, and it's mate. Now let's see if this is the answer. Oh, there is one stop in the middle, temporary of course, because a bishop will take the pawn, and now the rook goes all the way to the end, it's mate. Let's see what's happening here. It seems that the h2 pawn is very unsafe, to say the least. King doesn't have too many options. But here we need what's called the clearance sacrifice. A bishop will go from d6 to c5 check. And let's assume either the pawn or the bishop takes a bishop, the bishop pawn before or the bishop on b6. Then a rook takes the rook on d1, it's mate. But do they have anything else to do, the blacks? They don't necessarily need to take a bishop. Let's see what else can white do? If they move the king to f1, a queen goes to f2 and it's mate. What else can they do? What if they interfere and they put their rook on here on d4? And be careful, because we must go with checks, because black is threatening with checkmate on c7. Let's start again. The toughest response for white. Bishop, rook goes here. Here we are, and then queen goes to e1 and its mate. Yes, one needs to see these things because otherwise we cannot afford to lose our concentration. Because then, as I said, now the bishop is here, but if the bishop moves for the clear and sacrifice, then white is waiting one move to send the queen to c7 and win. But let's see if this is the answer. Nope, they didn't even give us. Oh, I didn't see that. Fortunately, however, this is not going to stop us. Fortunately, so the last move, queen to e1 mate. I got lucky. I didn't see the best answer for white, but fortunately, it was along the correct path, and then I saw the correct. What is happening here? We did 30 correct, and this. Let's see the material. Queen, rook, both sides. 2, 3, 4, 7 pawns for black, 6 for white. So white is one pawn below. They can easily take it on a7 and equalize the material. But that's not what we want. Are there any checks? I can't see white having any check from anywhere. Can we win material? Black is very near. If they can place a queen on g2 its mate, or if a rook leaves the first rank, but black is blocked with their own pawn, so this gives us a little bit of time. Doesn't seem easy at all. Clearly, we're not going to move a king, doesn't help at all. Can we move our pawns? The b and the e pawn. The e pawn at least threatens the queen, but will easily be taken. If the pawn on b5 was not here, I would play for white. Queen goes to e8 check, and then no matter what black does, I win the rook on h5. And of course, it's not checkmate, but winning the extra rook, unless black has a checkmate, which they don't because their own pawns are blocking them, especially the d4, because without the d4 pawn, queen could easily go to a1 and checkmate. One needs to look at these things carefully, not just win the rook. Wow, wonderful, we won the rook, and then queen goes to a1 checkmate. In fact, in one game, after I lost the rook, I didn't even sacrifice. I lost it out of carelessness. I saw later that I had checkmate with, even though I had only queen, my opponent had queen and rook. In fact, the rook was blocking the enemy's king. But if we move the pawn, because the way to clear the square is with a pawn. But if, of course, black has tons of ways to reply. They can put the queen on any square on the 8th rank, or the rook, or move the rook anywhere. But then a pawn goes to a7 and we're near promotion. Will this work? Let's give a look. I can't see anything better than moving the pawn to b6. Correct. Now, I think it is a sacrifice, the combination that will give us the rook. Queen goes to a8 check. And no matter how black replies, how many moves they have? They only have one. Queen to go to d8. And then we win the rook. I don't think we can mate after that. But let's see first if this move is the correct. And yes, it is. And the third move we can check from here, but so what? I think the best thing is, and the queen is too far away for checkmate. Not only d4, it's blocked by 2 pawns, d6 and d4. And we win the rook. Good. What's happening here? We have the black knight threatening 2 of our rooks. So if we're not careful, we lose at least exchange. If we do nothing, we lose a whole rook. If we move a bishop, for example, to b2, or if we move one of our rooks, for example, this one to b1 or this one to f1, we minimize the damage to an exchange. But can we do something better? Here you see that the knight on e4 is between a rook on e1 and the king on e8. But if we check with the knight, if we move, for example, to c3, black takes a rook. But what if it is a double check? Then they cannot take the rook because we have double check. With double check, you can never take a piece. You can never interfere. You must move your king. So other double checks are 2 of them. Knight can go either to d6 or to f6. But we need a follow-up. If knight goes to d6, king goes to d7, and so on. If knight goes to f6, king has only one square to go, d8. Let's see carefully. And then a rook goes to e8 and it is mate. Imagine being in such a apparently so bad position where you lose at least an exchange. The opponent has a bishop and a knight near your king with tons of threats, and then suddenly you see the wonderful double check. Here we saw it easier because it is a problem. It is an exercise, a puzzle. But in the real game, no one is going to tell you this is a puzzle. In a real game, every move you must look at it as if there was a puzzle. Let's see if this is correct. It may not. Yep. Let's continue now. Black is to play. White has more material, clearly has an extra knight. But the white king is at the corner. That's why king safety is very, very important, sometimes more important than material. What if I king goes to g3? You see the mating pattern with king and rook versus king. It seems as if the other pieces don't exist because next move is going to be rook goes here. And this will to a1. This will work whether the king is on h1 or g1. But what can white do to stop it? Can they check? Nope. You see knight on light color, king on black, knight cannot check. Can rook check? Well, unfortunately, this pawn on g4 is stopping. Otherwise, the king could not even go to g3 in the first place. I don't think they can do anything else. They might put the rook somewhere here to block a check, but this is only one move delay. Let's see, king goes to g3. Exactly, that's what I said. Rook goes to a1, rook goes to b1, and mate. Let's continue now. Next puzzle. White king is at the corner. We have slightly more material because we have a queen and a knight versus two rooks. Pawns, how are we doing? We have 6 versus 6. So materially we're a little bit better, but nothing immediate. And also the two rooks, if they collaborate well, they can overpower a queen. What if a queen goes to either c1 or d1? King can only go to h2. And then what? That's a question. It's wonderful to have a check. If he goes to c1, could even win the knight at f4, but then the knight at g4 will get it. That looks as to be a tough puzzle. And the king cannot even go to h5 and attack one of the rooks. The rooks are well defended. If the knight goes, let's assume queen goes to e1, king goes to h2, and knight goes to d3, attacks the rook, and so what? The rook has tons of squares to go. And then the knight can go to f2, and so what? This doesn't seem to work. What if the knight goes directly to d3 and attacks the rook? The rook has many squares to go. Can even go here. Well, one combination that could do that will win us, give us at least an exchange. If the knight goes here and rook goes who knows where. The knight can go to f2 check and win the rook on g4, but if the rook stays along the f file, that is not even going to work. Because the rook will take a knight. Of course, if we check with the queen and the king goes to h2, then there is not even this combination. Queen can also check from a1, and then the queen can even win the a5 pawn. We got a pawn. And so what? This is not winning. Of course, it's nice to get it, but this cannot be the answer to the puzzle. It can be the best move in a real game if you have nothing better to do, because after that we win the pawn, and the a pawn becomes an outside passed pawn. Wonderful to have, but far away from any real solution. What else can we do? Queen goes to a1 check, king to h2, and queen can go now to e5 and pin the knight on f4. Wonderful. And how can we win it? We can win it with the knight going to perhaps d3. Yes. But then black can start having perpetuals. Look at that. With the rook on g4 going to h4. And then they definitely have a perpetual. The same thing if they win the pawn. White with the rooks on f and g, they can have perpetuals and we're having material. The best I can see is a knight going to d3 and attacking the rook. And then we might be able to win an exchange. Let's see if this is the answer, and I'm very, very skeptical, but I can't see anything better. Wrong. We'll see later what is the answer. Here, if queen goes to a8 check, then the black queen can go to b8. If rook takes rook, oh yeah, another difficult. The difficult ones are starting coming. Oh, here we are. Queen goes to, if we forgot the bishop on g2, queen goes here, check. Black must place the queen on b8, no other answer. And then if bishop goes to b7, it should be made. The queen is pink, cannot take it. Bishop goes to b7, and that is made. Good. 34 to 35, two-thirds of a record, but these were the easy two-thirds. Now the difficult ones will start. Here, let's see. Both kings are very, very exposed, but it's our turn to play. What checks do we have? We have queen to h1, king goes e2, f2, and then so what? Bishop goes to b5 would be wonderful check, but only, unfortunately, the knight will take it. Rook goes to e1. Three ways to answer the check. I can't see how we can get out of that. Well, queen goes to a1, we win a rook. What is the material? Queen rook to bishops, queen, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, we're in exchange ahead, and if we win a rook, the material difference is enormous, but unfortunately for us, white has a very, very strong attack. At the very minimum, they can have a perpetual their queen. And our queen hiding on a1 is not going to help at all. If queen goes to a1, let's see. To h1, king can only go to f2, nowhere else. Then what checks do we have? Yep, bishop goes to e1 check, and only one answer for white. Rook takes on e1, and then a queen goes to e1 and should be made. Let's see if this is the answer. Fortunately, we have a lot of control, a lot of influence over the e1 square. Yep, bishop goes here. We sacrifice a bishop because now a queen will checkmate. And we got 35 out of 36. Look at the first three rows. We only got one wrong, 35 correct. But now more and more difficult puzzles will come. And let's look at this. This is a very nice fork or double threat, because if I queen goes to a4, you see it is both check on the king and also threatens bishop at b4. Usually in the beginning of the game, black will have a knight on g8, goes to f6, and both covers the check and protects the bishop. But now there is no such knight. Or is there any other way to stop it? Once in one of our games, if you saw in the recent USAT championship, in a similar position, black had one pawn move that did not allow me to win the bishop, although later I would win the game. But really at that time I played this move knowing that if my opponent saw the answer and they moved the pawn, at least I still had a strong attack. If they didn't see it, I would win a bishop. And unfortunately for me, they saw it, but later on I would win the game. Let's see here what's happened. If the queen goes to it for check, how can black reply? They can place a king to f8, e7, we win the bishop, in fact, with a check. They can place a queen on d7 or their knight on d7. Again, we win the bishop. So this would be the answer. Queen goes here, and we win the bishop. Oops, not so easy, because the queen goes to h4 and is checking us. And now we have to be very, very careful, because if we push the pawn to g3, very tempting, but the knight goes here, and they have a discovered check. Our rook is in a very tough situation, is lost. What else can we do? We can move our king, but where? To e2. We move it to e2, queen goes to e2 check. Unfortunately, our bishop on c1 is covering the d2 squares. I think, but if the knight goes to g3, can we checkmate? No, I think the only answer we have, but I think if it goes to e2, knight can go to g3 check. Let's see, and it's still the same as if we had placed a pawn on g3. The only difference is we don't lose the g3 pawn, but still lose our rook. Anyway, we can take this queen. We have anything else we have. We can also place our king on d1. And then knight goes to f2 check. And they win the rook. This time much easier. What is the best move? Are we ahead? How much material are we ahead? We have two rooks and four pieces, and they have two rooks and three pieces. So we could afford to lose an exchange and still be ahead in material. Materially, I think the one where we better is if king goes to e2. King goes to e2 is the one where materially we lose the least out of the combination of black, and with the extra bishop to e1, we should be ahead. Let's see if this is the answer. Nope. So we got two wrong until now, 35 correct and two wrong. Let's see how well can we do. I hope we can get as many correct as possible here. What can we do? If queen takes rook, think about it. Then rook takes queen, nothing else to black can do. White places the rook on a8 check. Black goes to h7. Rook checks from here. Queen has to go here. And we win the quick. We win the queen. That is the best I can say for now. Otherwise, materially, we are the same. Queen, rook, queen, two rooks, light piece, and 3 pawns. Yep. 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 Now, do we get it with the rook or with the bishop? If we take the bishop, even if the pawn takes back, we're ahead by an exchange. If we take with the rook, no, we should take with the bishop. I can't say anything else. Yep, got 36 correct and two wrong. Let's see how many can we do. Because now they'll be the really difficult ones, not the easy ones we're used to. If a bishop goes to d4, threatens the white queen on e3. Where can it go? Almost anywhere it goes, it is lost unless it goes back to d2, but then a queen goes to b2 with a mate. Let's see if this is the answer. What else? Can it threaten a queen? No, because the rooks are blocked by the pawn, by a rook and a king. Yep, 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 and we got it. Now let's see what is this one. 37 out of 39 for now. Oh, we have to deal with a check to begin with. How to deal? We can either take the queen, but then we lose a queen. Materially, we are just a pawn ahead, I think. But where can the king go? Either f1 or h1. If it goes to f1, we're going... Not exactly, because we have a bishop here. Go to h1, there is the danger of the back rank. It seems the most reasonable thing. Can we also place a bishop here? No, because they put the rook attack a queen, I have discovered. So it seems that king going to f1 seems the most reasonable for now. Let's see if it is. Yes. Now, took a pawn, they threaten our rook on h5, they threaten a lot of things, back ranks. What if we win the two rooks for a queen? Then they'll take a rook. No, not too well at all. What if we take their bishop? We can take with the rook their bishop. And then I don't think I can easily check. Get it? Yes, we got 38 out of 40. Here, let's say we have a check with a queen going to c1, and if the black queen blocks it, we win the queen. Otherwise, the king can go to d7. A queen will go to c7 check. The king goes to, and then a queen goes to c6 check. It's going to be difficult for what to reply. Now, queen goes to c8, check. And then what can black do? They cannot they cannot interfere, they cannot win the queen. King cannot go to f5, cannot go here, cannot go here. I think queen to c8 is mate. No, almost. Here we're going to win the black queen. If a queen checks on b7, look at that. The king needs to stay near the black queen, but the only square they can go is e6. Yes, and we won the queen. Good. 39 out of 41. Yeah, what can we do? We're attacking the pawn on e7. How many times? 3 times. With the two rooks and the bishop. Defended 3 times, the two rooks and the queen. But if a knight goes to d5, the bishop will take it. Goes to b5. If for any reason we or on d6 took something on c5, there's a pin. If the knight goes to b5, so what? Even if we win the pawn, we might lose a knight. This is going to be a tough one. I don't see an easy way out. If the queen takes the pawn, knight goes to b5, it's a nice threat, but the one move threat, queen has so many squares to go. You can even protect the d7, but even if it goes to b6, yes, we win the pawn, we lose a knight. And we threaten the queen with the knight going b5, d5. d5, the bishop on a8 will take it. b5, we threaten, and then so what? Yeah, 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 I can't see anything, even a false promise. You don't move a knight, the bishop on g7 can take it and double up pawns, of course, and then so what? Here, well, yes, knight goes to b5 and then goes to d6, threaten the two rooks, and if the pawn takes it, we win the rook. This is the only somewhat promising move I can see. Yes. Yes, now we exchange queens and win the rook. Good, we got an exchange and at least we got this one right. 40 out of 42. Now let's see what this thing happens. This looks like a smothered mate, but is it? Because too many times it may fail with the details. If knight goes to f7, thing must go here, because if rook takes it, then we can win the exchange, but also queen can go to c8, can have different mating combinations with back ranks. If king goes here, knight goes to h6, double check. King goes back, queen goes here, rook takes it, and then we have a smothered mate. Let's see if this is the answer. No, they prefer to take it to the rook, so we don't follow the smothered mate path. What do? Queen goes to c8 check, take the knight, take the queen, take the rook, and it's mate. 41, good. Now let's see what can we do here. Near the end, where both kings are unprotected, but it's our turn to play. We better do something fast or else. The fastest thing is if knight goes to f2 or g3. With a question, so what now? Or queen can go to a1. Queen goes to e1, king goes to h2, queen goes to e5, And we have back and forth. Uh, Materially, we're more or less the same, but anyway, we can win. If knight goes to either to f2 or g3. G3 seems to be more promising because if king goes to h2, at least we have a discover. F2, if king goes to g1, there is a so what. Doesn't seem to follow up. Now there are follow-ups, but none of them yet promising. But let's send the knight to g3 because I can't see anything better. Wrong. So we got 41 correct. Let's see what did we do wrong and learn from them. The first one, what did we try to do? I think I checked from queen going to a1. No, I started with the knight going to d to d3. Is this what I tried? I tried the knight to do to d3 and it was wrong. So let's see the solution. This is a solution. I say why? The rook has many squares where it can go. I don't see why this is a solution because the rook, yes, is attacked, but it can go to here. Can go here and attack the queen, can go here, it has at least 4 squares to go. And this rook is protected by the pawn, not that the king is going to win the rook. But here they can even start trying for a perpetual, because rook goes g4. I can't see why this is the answer. Analysis, can we do analysis? Wait a minute, here it's as if white is going to play. What is the original? Queen to e1, king to h2, and to d3. And goes to d3. And this is it. Rook to h4. Rook to h4 check. Into g5. Rook ace to g4. King to h5. Why rook to EU? Yes, because if rook goes here, we exchange and we have the extra knight. That's why they mustn't. Their knight on f5 check. And from here on, there is no follow-up. So this is it. One would have to think a lot of moves ahead. So that's why we got this one wrong. Let's see the second one. We got a few moves correct. We said check. Here we got. And here, what do we do? Should we place a pawn? Yes, a pawn. But now look what's happening. Our rook is in danger. Can our rook survive to go to or nope? Let's see the solution. Or let's try once again. And what if we take it? They win a rook and they are happy because we got 2 pieces uh, uh, for the rook. But I thought we could win the same thing without even losing a pawn like that. And let's look at the last one. What did we do? We placed a knight here, and it's the wrong one. What's the solution? And it goes to f2. Yes, queen. Yes, but king can escape. Where I can go to either f3 or f4. Okay, perhaps. So that is what happened now. We finished 41 puzzles correct out of 44. Next, we'll continue with the bots, which is the next bot on the line. Let's have it ready. It's going to be Arthur from Wales with a rating of 1700. Let's see what can we do. As far as the puzzle are concerned, 41 out of 44. Didn't make a record, but I think we did quite well. And once again, I'm asking you if you have tried these puzzles. You may want to write in the comments what was your experience, how many have you been able to do, how did you do in the puzzles I was going through, did you try to do them, and how did you do? A very exciting way to learn more about chess. This is grecochess. I'm Harry Lausani series, and for now, goodbye.